We didn't call the police, we called the FBI. Because when your family runs a secret torture system that's been going for 6 decades, the local cops won't save you. They're part of it. I live streamed my uncle trying to tie down a 9-year-old girl in our basement, and 32,000 people watched it happen live as the FBI stormed in. My name is Rachel Logan, and if you think your family has secrets, imagine this. Ours had a room, underground, soundproof, windowless, where every generation picked one girl to absorb the family's emotions. Not a metaphor. They actually beat her, screamed at her, took out their anger, and called it a cleansing tradition. Each chosen girl would be locked in the basement the day she turned 16, wearing a silver collar with a latch. She was called the emotion anchor, a living scapegoat. They'd summon her whenever Dad lost a business deal, whenever Grandpa got mad that dinner was cold, whenever someone had a fight with the neighbors, and the kids were taught, the anchor keeps the peace. My grandmother kept that tradition alive. She never laid a finger on anyone. All she did was ring her little silver bell, and everyone knew the ritual had begun. They believed it protected the women in the family. They believed in it like it was a moral code. I used to think if I just stayed quiet, stayed good, I'd be spared. But then I heard crying through the air vent, Ellie's voice, my cousin, the one who lived in that basement. I heard every scream, every plea, every punishment schedule like clockwork. And I knew if I didn't do something, the next anchor would be Emily, a 9-year-old little girl. I didn't call the police. I called the FBI. And that was when hell truly began. The Logan family isn't the kind of family you just walk away from. They cling to their traditions like blood, as if it's the glue that keeps them together. But tradition in my family wasn't Sunday dinners or lake house vacations in Michigan. It was a room called the White Room, the White Basement. No windows, no echoes, just silence and fear. My grandfather, Joseph Logan, was a Marine in the Korean War. When he came home, he built that room himself under the family estate in Claiborne, Kentucky. To the world, he was a devoted husband, a strict but loving father, and a successful businessman. But behind that mask, he believed in violence if it had a purpose. He called it the purification method. Each generation, one girl from the Logan bloodline would be chosen to absorb all the family's negative emotions. They called her the emotion anchor, a so-called peacekeeper angel. Her job was to take on everyone's rage, frustration, and pain, so the rest of the family could live in peace. The tradition began in 1963 when his first daughter, my aunt, was chosen. And since then, not a single generation skipped a beat. Whenever one anchor died or couldn't continue, a new one was chosen immediately. No mourning period, no pause, just the replacement cycle. Each anchor wore a custom silver cuff with a lock, engraved with a family code, the date she was chosen, and the words, "For peace within." A brutal little joke. They never called it imprisonment, they called it offering, and the chosen girl had no right to say no. Women in the family played just as big a role as the men. My grandmother was the one who selected the anchor, my mom organized the cuffing ceremony, and my aunts? They documented it all in a velvet-bound, hand-stitched book called the Logan Testament. Each page listed the anchor's name, years of service, her resilience score, and notes on her level of cooperation. When I was little, I saw Ellie, my cousin, being chosen. I was hiding under the stairs, watching as Grandma rang the silver bell, her mother sobbing as she placed the cuff on her own daughter's ankle. Ellie had just turned 16, I was 11, and that's when I knew. One day, it'd be me. When the adults punished her, they didn't call it beating. They called it pressure release. Every male in the family had a scheduled day of the week. Dad was Wednesdays, Uncle Saturdays, Grandpa Sundays. The women came less often, but they still came, with disappointment, with cold lectures, and sometimes a slap if the anchor didn't cooperate. And I used to believe, truly believe, that if one person suffered, the whole family could stay peaceful. But Ellie's cries echoing through the vents woke something up in me. I realized this wasn't a tradition, this was a cult disguised as bloodline. And I knew if I didn't break it, it would be me, or Emily, or some other girl next in line, forced to wear the silver cuff and spend the rest of her life in the White Room. I used to think maybe it was just the men, that only they kept this twisted tradition alive, that only they used fists instead of words, that only they walked down to the basement and turned a girl into their personal outlet. But I was wrong, painfully wrong. The women in my family weren't victims, they were key players in the machine. My grandmother, Miriam Logan, never laid a hand on anyone, but she was the one who chose the anchor. She made the schedules, she rang the bell that signaled the start of the ritual, and every time a replacement was needed, she read the contribution report, listing obedience levels, rule violations, and how much pain the current anchor could endure. My mother, Karen, used to cry outside my bedroom door when she was drunk. But when I asked her about Ellie, my cousin, all she said was, "It's for the good of the family. If Ellie doesn't carry the pain, someone else will have to." And the next morning, she'd prepare the meals for the basement. Food slid through a slot in the door. No eye contact, no thank yous. My aunts, 3 women who were once little girls just like me, they were the ones who wrote the Logan legacy, a full record of every anchor since my great-grandfather's time. The book was hand-stitched, trimmed in red velvet, and displayed in a glass case like some sacred artifact. Every chosen girl had her own file, with notes like age selected, years of service, reason for replacement, and adaptability index. As for the men, they were the enforcers. Each had a set day of the week. My grandfather Joseph always claimed Sundays. My father picked Wednesdays. My uncles, more flexible. They'd compete for prime hours on the weekends. None of them ever felt guilty. To them, the anchor wasn't a person. She was a tool, a human pressure valve. Once, I asked my Uncle Greg if he ever felt bad about hurting Ellie. He just laughed and said, "Nope. She exists so I don't have to take it out on my wife." That's when I realized this wasn't just some family tradition. It was a system. And systems don't survive without willing participants. Men and women, each had a role: the chooser, the acceptor, the enforcer, the one who looks away. No one stood outside of it. No one was truly innocent. I started hearing the sounds on a rainy night. At first, it was just faint whimpering. I thought it was a stray cat outside the porch, but on the second night, then the third, and the fourth, it kept happening. Same time, every night. The same broken rhythm, like someone trying to hold back sobs in sheer desperation. A week later, I decided to follow the sound. I turned off every light in my room, sat quietly against the wall near my closet, and held my breath. When everything fell completely silent, I heard it again, clearer this time. And for the first time, I realized It was a voice, a woman's voice, rough, shaky, each word breaking off like it hurt to say, "Please, no, I can't even stand today." My chest tightened like it was being crushed. This wasn't fear of the unknown anymore. This was real. Someone was down there, trapped, tortured, right beneath the house I lived in. The next day, I started checking the vents, one by one. I pressed my ear against each one, in my parents' room, the living room, even the laundry area. The sounds were louder. Sometimes it was the clinking of chains, sometimes it was screams, and sometimes it was someone reading a schedule. Wednesday, 6 p.m., James. Saturday, 10 a.m., Victor. Sunday, Grandpa. That's when the horrifying truth hit me. The vent system in our house connected every room to the basement. No one was isolated from the truth, they just pretended not to hear it. I started questioning everything I ever believed. Ellie, my cousin, the girl I used to play dolls with, was living down there, in the white basement, no windows, no clocks, summoned like an object, on a fixed routine. And everyone around me, my grandmother, my mother, walked, ate, talked like nothing was happening. I asked Mom where Ellie was. She said, "She's resting, don't worry about it." I asked Dad why there were voices under the floor. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, "Old walls, sound echoes, you're imagining things." But I knew I wasn't imagining. I started recording what I heard, hid the recorder under my pillow, wrote down every schedule I caught, every voice, every scream. That's when fear turned into suspicion, and suspicion became resolve, because I knew if I didn't do something, it would be my name on that schedule next. All I had to do was turn 16. Ever since the night I heard crying through the vent, I stopped being the naive kid I used to be. I no longer believed my mom's soft reassurances, or the way Grandma would say, "Everything we do is to keep the family safe." But I also knew this. If it was just me, I wouldn't be able to change anything. So I started watching my cousins, the ones who avoided eye contact whenever someone mentioned the white room, the ones who stayed quiet at dinner, and most importantly, the ones who hadn't been chosen yet. I approached them one by one, didn't say much, just asked a single question. "Have you ever heard anything coming from the basement?" The first to nod was Nina, Uncle Victor's daughter. She was only 10, but smart as hell, always hiding an old tablet under her bed to play games. When I asked her, her eyes widened. Then she whispered, "Ellie cries a lot. They told me if I talked about it, they'd switch me with her." Then there was Vera, 13. Knew how to pick a door lock with a bobby pin. She said every time someone went down to the basement, her dad would tell her, "You didn't hear anything, you didn't see anything." But Vera did see, and she remembered everything. Eventually, I had 6 girls, all cousins, all under the selection age. But every one of them knew they only had a few years, a few months, maybe even a few days. We met every night in the old tool shed behind the garden, a place no one ever checked. I called it the evac room. We divided up the work. Nina drew a map of the vent system. Vera practiced unlocking the basement door. I recorded everything from my room, the moans, the screams, and the weekly rotation of names. James, Victor, Grandpa. We left gauze, antiseptic, snacks, wrapped in tiny plastic bags and pushed through the vents. Some nights Ellie would whisper back, "Thank you. Don't let them know you're helping me." I had never felt so terrified and so powerful. Every move we made was a gamble. If they caught us, we'd be next. But maybe that's why we couldn't stop. There was no turning back. They'd taught us we were weak, that we were supposed to obey. But now, we were a network, a secret underground resistance. And our very first mission was clear. Don't let a single one of us become the next anchor. I'll never forget the look in Emily's eyes that day. She was Aunt Marlene's youngest daughter, just 9 years old, tiny, fragile, always carrying around a worn-out comic book like it was her shield. Emily was the quiet one, always tucked in a corner during Logan family gatherings, never loud, never a problem. But that day, she stood in the center of the room, under the dim gold light of the chandelier, facing Grandma, and the silver ritual bell. Grandma rang it 3 times, sharp, deliberate, like a sentence being handed down. Everyone stood in a circle. No one spoke. No one looked at Emily. Only Ellie did. Standing next to her, wrist bruised, one eye swollen shut. She stared straight at Emily, her eyes screaming even though her lips stayed sealed. She wasn't allowed to speak. She had spoken once before, and she'd paid dearly for it. The family council has decided, Grandma announced. Emily Grace Logan will inherit the responsibility of maintaining peace, beginning next week. Ellie has completed her service. I stood at the back door, my hand shaking as I held my phone. The ceremony was happening in the family room, the same room where we used to celebrate Christmas. Now they were using it to hand a 9-year-old over to monsters. I hit go live. The screen lit up, live stream active. The camera focused on Emily, on Grandma, on Ellie, and the whole damn circle of witnesses. Vera, waiting for the signal, hit play on the hidden Bluetooth speaker under the sofa. And then came the sounds, Ellie's sobs, Uncle Victor reading out punishment schedules, my own voice whispering in the night. Ellie, are you still there? The room went still. 1 second, 2 seconds. By the time Grandma realized what was happening, Vera had already locked the door from the outside. Nina, posted at the front gate, was firing off clips, photos, audio files, sending them to journalists, lawyers, and the FBI. They're going to kill you, someone hissed. I'm not scared, and 1,000 people are already watching. That was the first time I saw Grandma step back. No one could stop me now. No one could bury this anymore. And Emily, that tiny little girl, I pulled her out of the ceremonial circle. She held my hand. Didn't cry, didn't smile. She just whispered, I knew, sis. I was next. I thought that live stream would be the end. That once the world saw a family sacrificing children, the law would act. That justice would come. But I forgot something. This wasn't just about my family. It was a system. And systems don't fall that easily. 2 days after the live stream, the local police showed up. No handcuffs, no crime van, just, we've noted the report, but the final decision's up to the court. 3 days later, they held an emergency hearing. The judge was Charles Alden. Silver-haired, deep voice, looked every bit the respectable authority, but when he rolled up his sleeve to sign the order to suspend the investigation, I saw it. On his left wrist, a silver cuff, same design as the anchor bracelets, engraved with the Logan family crest, a symbol only insiders wore. I didn't need any more proof. He was one of them. Upon review, he said, the court finds insufficient grounds for prosecution. The evidence is inadmissible. The footage is unverified. Case dismissed. I froze. Ellie trembled beside me. Emily clung tightly to my arm in the back of the courtroom. Across the room, Grandma smiled. My dad squeezed Uncle Victor's hand, both of them nodding like they'd just won a chess match they'd rigged from the start. But the legal attack wasn't the only hit. That afternoon, my student bank account got locked. The bank claimed I was under investigation for suspicious laundering activity. I couldn't withdraw a single cent. That night, I came home to find my bedroom window smashed, shards of glass on my bed, a full-color photo placed neatly on my pillow, Emily sitting in her classroom, taken from a distance. Then came the anonymous messages. First, heavy breathing. Then, "You have no idea what you're messing with. You won't survive the next semester. Family is where you learn your place." Day 3, Vera's mom showed up at my doorstep. In front of all the neighbors, she grabbed me and screamed, "My daughter's been saying crazy things. You're putting ideas in her head that will destroy my family." Vera disappeared after that. Phone disconnected, social media gone. Her family announced they had moved out of state suddenly. I knew it wasn't her choice. She'd been removed from the resistance. Next was Nina. Her parents sent in a withdrawal letter to the school citing emotional trauma. She vanished too. No goodbye. No trace. 1 week later, I was alone. Just me. Ellie, barely hanging on. And Emily, the little girl who almost got sacrificed, now sleeping every night with the light on and her eyes wide open. And I knew, if I didn't have allies, I wouldn't survive this war. But if I gave up, no one would be left to protect the children. I used to hear people say, when local authorities turn their backs, don't chase justice. Find the truth and turn it into a weapon. I didn't truly understand that until the day I knocked on the door of Greg Miller, Melissa's dad, my best friend from high school. Greg was a quiet man, eyes sharp like a blade. Before retiring, he worked federal investigations, specializing in human trafficking, child abuse, and deep state protection networks. When I walked into his house, carrying a bag full of documents, hard drives, and a phone bursting with evidence, he looked at me for a few seconds and simply said, "You want to bring down a system." "Not a family, a system," I replied. We sat at his kitchen table for 4 hours. I played every clip, every recording, explained every cousin who had vanished. Greg didn't speak once, just scribbled notes, underlined names and dates. When I finished, he stood up, disappeared into his study, and came back with an old file box. "I investigated a case like this in 2002, he said. "It got shut down. Not because we lacked evidence, but because my superior wore the same silver bracelet you described." And from that moment on, Greg and I launched a real investigation. He reached out to old colleagues, the ones who still had integrity. We traced the ties between my family and others in Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and Georgia. Using marriage records, family reunion photos, and matching silver symbols on bracelets, we mapped out a network, 12 families spanning the American South. They didn't just share the emotion anchor tradition, they shared legal protection, business interests, and media silence. Every family had a friendly judge, a carefully selected police chief, a lawyer who knew when to shut up. They held anchor ceremonies like sacred inheritance rituals. And as Greg put it, they think if it lasts long enough, it becomes acceptable. We uncovered years of wire transfers from my grandfather's company to accounts under Alden Consulting, a shell company founded by Judge Charles Alden. 15 years of payments, once a month, same amount, no changes, like clockwork. A bribery contract, plain and simple. But more important than paper trails, living witnesses. Through Greg's contacts, we found 3 women, all former anchors from other families, all escapees. Sarah Chen, 32, living off-grid since she was 19. Maria Santos, 28, still bears ankle scars from the silver cuff. Jennifer Wu, 41, tried to sue her entire family and lost. We met them at a small-town cafe 2 states away. They came cautiously, eyes wary. But when I played Ellie's Crying from the recording, they all nodded. They knew. They'd been me. They'd been Emily. Jennifer pulled out a thick folder containing photos of the cuff she once wore, medical injury reports, images of containment rooms with family symbols on the walls, threat letters, rejected court filings, and a map showing 15 ritual sites tied to the 12 bloodlines. Greg photographed everything. Together we built a federal case. The charges included human trafficking, unlawful imprisonment, organized abuse of minors, obstruction of federal justice. Greg looked me in the eye and said, "When local law is bought, we take it federal, and over there no silver bracelet is big enough to hide behind." We weren't afraid anymore. We had names, we had dates, we had proof, and for the first time, I had a real team fighting with me. It was a gray afternoon, no rain, but the sky was heavy with lead-colored clouds. I was sitting in Greg's kitchen, taping together our family network chart when the doorbell rang. Greg went to answer it, and immediately stood in the doorway like a stone wall. He didn't call for me, but I heard the voice before I even got up. "I just want a private word with my granddaughter. No need for you to play bodyguard." I stepped out. It had been weeks since I last saw her, since the day I ruined the ceremony. And honestly, I was surprised. She didn't look as fierce as I remembered. Cream-colored suit, expensive leather handbag, lips painted in her usual blood red. She smiled like she was still hosting afternoon tea. Then, without a word, she reached into her purse and pulled out a thick envelope, set it on the wooden porch table. 2 million, already placed in a trust fund. Your name, no conditions. All I ask is that you drop the charges, destroy the files, and let the past stay buried. I let out a laugh, short, sharp, almost choking. Did she really think I could be bought? After everything I'd seen, after hearing the cries, the screams, after watching them declare Emily the next generation? There's not enough money in the world to wash the blood off that white room under your house. Her smile vanished instantly. She straightened, like peeling off the last layer of fake civility. Her voice dropped, cold as forged steel. "Ellie's spine is almost done for. She won't make it through the winter. And whether you believe it or not, our family will continue, with or without the FBI, with or without lawyers, with or without live streams, with or without you." My hand tightened around the phone in my pocket. It was still recording. "You've got no one left, Rachel. The other girls are gone. Ellie, she'll be replaced next week. Emily will take her place. The wheel doesn't stop because a child screams." I stepped forward, met her gaze. "If you touch Emily, I won't just sue this family. I'll send every piece of evidence to every newsroom, every federal office, every human rights group in this country." She didn't respond, just stared at me, then turned to leave. But as she stepped off the porch, she paused, looked back one last time. "You'll regret this, for betraying your own blood." She left in her silver Mercedes. Greg walked out and placed a firm hand on my shoulder. "It's time." I nodded. Tomorrow night, we get Emily out. This time, no secrets, no hiding. And I knew there wouldn't be a second chance. This was it, our only shot to end everything. I broke into the estate through the old coal chute behind the garden, a forgotten tunnel buried under vines and rusted mesh. Vera had shown me this path before they took her. The door still opened with the same kind of lockpick we used as kids, back when breaking into storage rooms felt like a game. Inside was pitch black, no lights, no sound, but I could hear breathing, faint, fragile. I raised my flashlight toward the far corner of the white room, and there she was, Emily. She was curled up, knees to her chest, her ankle cuffed with a silver band, exactly like Ellie's. Her eyes were wide, but empty. That distant stare I'd come to know too well, the look every child had when the system broke them. She wasn't crying, just repeating a single sentence over and over. Ceremony starts tomorrow morning. I have to stay here to get ready. I pulled out my phone, opened the Livestream app. Tonight we end this. The feed went live. Viewer count 47, 92, 300, climbing fast. I pointed the camera at the cuff, at Emily's face, the bruises on her ankle, and I spoke clearly. This is Emily Logan, 9 years old. She's been held in this room for the past 24 hours in preparation for a generational ritual. The Logan family has carried out this practice for over 60 years. I knelt down, pulled the lock kit from my bag. My hands were shaking with sweat, my heart pounding in my throat. I glanced at the phone. Over 12,000 people watching live. Then I heard footsteps above me on the hardwood floor. Fast, rushed. They knew. I hadn't even finished unlocking the cuff when the basement door slammed open. My father came down first, then Uncle Victor, then Grandpa, then Aunt Marlene. One by one, the people I'd grown up with, the ones who used to tuck me in and braid my hair, now stared at me like I was a traitor to the nation. "Stop, Rachel," Grandpa growled. "Put the phone down. Step away from Emily." I stood between them and her, one hand holding the phone high, the other gripping the lockpick. Over 30,000 people are watching. Every word you say, every move you make, it's all in their hands now. Uncle Victor lunged. I dodged, fell hard on the concrete floor. The phone kept streaming. Emily screamed. Hands grabbed my hair. Another hand tore at the phone. And then, the knock from upstairs. A booming voice through a speaker. "Federal Marshals! Everyone remain where you are!" The basement door burst open again, this time with a flood of blinding white light. Boots thundered down the stairs. A commanding voice rang out. "This room is being broadcast live. Hands in the air, now!" I lay there in the chaos, sweat, blood, fear, fists flying, and through the blur, I saw Emily. For the first time, her eyes flickered with something I'd never seen in her before. Hope. White beams from tactical flashlights cut through the basement. Boots thundered down the wooden stairs. Short, sharp commands echoed through the air. "Hands up! Face the wall! You are under federal investigation." U.S. Marshals, in full tactical gear, bulletproof vests stamped U.S. Marshal, flooded the room like a rising tide, and in seconds my entire family, the people who once ruled this house like gods, were face down on the floor, zip-tied, wrists pinned behind their backs. I stood there, slumped against the wall, blood trickling from my forehead. But I never took my eyes off her. Grandma was on her knees. The silver cuff on her wrist glinted under the flashlight beam. She opened her mouth to say something, but the agent cut her off. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you. Emily was carried out of the White Room by a female FBI agent. She was trembling, her tiny hand still clinging tightly to my sleeve. I gave her a gentle squeeze and whispered, "You're never coming back here. I promise." Upstairs, the entire house was sealed. Crime scene teams were already snapping photos, collecting samples, silver cuffs, punishment schedules, cameras, recordings, ritual documents. Everything I once thought would stay buried forever, now sealed in federal evidence bags. 3 weeks later, the federal trial began in Washington, D.C., Logan versus United States broadcast nationwide. Over 15 million views on the opening day alone. People couldn't believe it, that something like this had existed right in the heart of America. The FBI released their findings. 17 members of the Logan family charged with unlawful imprisonment, torture, and exploitation of minors. 4 state judges, including Charles Alden, indicted for bribery and obstruction. 2 police chiefs exposed for deleting reports and falsifying evidence. 12 other families across the South placed under expanded investigation. At Judge Alden's home, agents found a safe containing lists of generational anchors, maps of underground facilities, medical records for over 30 girls, all of whom had disappeared from official systems. The country was stunned. The press named it the Silver Circle case. What was once seen as a family tradition was now recognized as an organized network of abuse. When the verdicts were read, my grandfather, 80 years old, received life in prison. My father and uncle, 45 years each, grandma, 40 years for orchestrating the rituals and selecting victims. The rest were sentenced from 10 to 30 years, depending on involvement. Even those who had remained silent but complicit were charged as enablers. The entire Logan estate was seized and converted into a national fund to support victims of systemic family abuse. I didn't cry when I heard the verdict. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel relief, just empty. Because even when justice is served, pain doesn't get sentenced. It only gets faced, day by day. After the trial, Ellie was transferred to a trauma recovery center in Colorado, a facility that specializes in long-term confinement survivors. For the first 2 months, she didn't speak a single word. She just sat by the window, sketching images of the White Room in shades of black pencil. But in the 3rd month, she finally spoke. "I thought I didn't deserve to live," until I saw Rachel pull Emily out of that room. Emily, the 9-year-old girl who almost became the next generation anchor, now lives with an adoptive family 3 states away. We video call once a week. The first time she smiled, I cried. Not out of sadness, but because I never thought I'd see that from a child who once lived in silence. Nina, Vera, and the other cousins, though scattered, have begun reconnecting thanks to a legal network for witness protection. Some are still in therapy, others are starting school again, as if childhood had just begun for them. And me? I went back to school too. I enrolled in social work and criminology, with a focus on domestic abuse and systemic power structures. At my senior speech, I didn't mention my family. I just said one thing. Tradition isn't what we protect with silence. Real tradition is what helps people grow, not what makes them bleed. I founded a small nonprofit called Anchor Free, dedicated to helping survivors who were imprisoned under the name of discipline, protection, or tradition. We support women, children, and those who've stayed silent their entire lives learn to speak for the very first time. The Logan estate was permanently sealed. During the final inspection, behind a false wall in the basement, they found the remains of 8 women. All of them disappeared from records. Their names had never appeared on any schedule. No one ever asked where they went. But now, each one is engraved on the memorial wall at Anchor Free. I still get letters from prison. Relatives calling me a traitorous snake, a failed daughter, a destroyer of bloodlines. I don't rip them up. I don't read them. I just file them in a folder labeled Proof of No Regret. I don't hate them anymore. I don't forgive them either, but I no longer let them define me. Because I've learned something. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's standing up while shaking, because you know if you stay silent, another Emily gets dragged into the basement. The silver cuffs have been melted down. The white rooms are empty now. And the children who once stayed silent have learned how to speak.